One evening last fall, Tom and I were on a motorcycle ride. And it was late fall, so the air was chilly. There were just a few leaves left on the trees, but it was a beautiful night for a ride. I think we were just south of here on a country road near Northfield. John, wherever you are, you know where Northfield is. And we were on this country road, and we were passing farm after farm. And being that it was late fall, the crops were very tall. It was harvest season. And sure enough, we passed a particular field, and against this beautiful, stunning sunset was a combine moving through the field. You've seen that, right? Seen that? Have you seen this picture ever? If you haven't, shame on you. I know that combines harvest during the day, but there's something about this picture that gets me every time, because the same thought goes through my mind. That farmer, during harvest season, nothing else matters. If they want to do a kitchen renovation, it waits till after harvest season. If there's an awesome football game on, can't watch that. It's harvest season. There's early mornings and there are late nights because there's only so much time to gather the harvest. So when I think about this sermon series, which is His Harvest, Our Hands, I hear Him, the Lord of the harvest, saying, it's time. It's harvest time. And His harvest He has placed in our hands. I want to look again at the scripture passage for this series. We read it last Sunday. We're going to read it again today in Matthew 9, beginning at verse 36. This is Jesus. When He saw the crowds, He had compassion on them. Sometimes when I read this verse, I picture, interestingly enough, the state fair. Have you ever stood at the state fair and just crowds? That's what I imagine. Jesus looking at the crowd and having compassion because why? They were confused and helpless, like sheep without a shepherd. And so He called His disciples and He said to them, the harvest. Now you got to get this because I'm going to talk a lot about the harvest today. The harvest, He's just seen what? The crowds of people that are helpless and confused, needing someone, something, needing a shepherd. And this is what He says, the harvest or people, it's great, but the workers are few. And then He offers this prayer request, if you will. Pray to the Lord who is in charge of the harvest. Ask Him to send more workers into His fields. In my Bible, I have written in the margin, let me be the answer to his prayer request. Let me be the answer to his prayer request. So today is the second message in this series. His mission, our place. His mission, our place. Now, if I were to ask you what his mission is, most of you in the room could tell me. You might use different words to rescue, to save, to reach, to comfort. But I think most of us would agree we know what his mission is. But if I were to ask you what his mission is not, that's where it gets a little tricky. We just read his prayer request. That's the last verse of Matthew chapter 9. We're going to pick it up with the next verse, which is the first verse of Matthew chapter 10. So Jesus called his 12 disciples together and gave them authority to cast out evil spirits and to heal every kind of disease and illness. Here we see what his mission is not. His mission is not for Jesus and those 12 disciples to just stay together and enjoy each other. But upon this prayer request of needing more workers, he gets his disciples together, ready or not, and he sends them. This is called the sending. He sends them into the field, so to speak, into the harvest. And today, his mission hasn't changed. He still wants to seek and to save those that are lost. And so his mission is not for those of us in this room to stay here. We've heard that time and time again over the last few weeks, that this is not the destination. This is where we come together. It is an awesome, incredible experience, what we just did in worship and seeing each other, and we feel good and we get nourished. But the destination is out here. It's out there. Our place, if we know his mission, then we've got to know our place. And our place is this community. It's a location. Think about where you live, where you shop. I want you to picture that in your mind. That's your place in the harvest. But a second thing I want you to consider is place on God's timeline. Where are we at on God's timeline? Perhaps the sun is setting. Perhaps we're at the end of this beautiful time called the church age. And he chose us to be part of the last great final harvest. Let that sink in. He chose us for this area and for this time. That's our place. I want you to know it's not as hard as you think. It's not as hard as you think. For me, for a long time, I've made this idea of being in the harvest more difficult than it is. I will hear a message like we heard last Sunday about his love for people, how he wants to use me to love, and I get touched in here, and I come to an altar, and I moved, and I go home, and I'm like, Tom, we got to sell the house. We got to get an apartment downtown Minneapolis. We got to do this thing. We got to be in the harvest. Now, he may ask us to do that. I don't know. But it's not that. It's not that hard. So I've got a simple plan for you today. It's going to be a 3-step plan. Sound like an infomercial. 3-step plan to find joy in the harvest. But I'm telling you, I'd like to say I've been doing this for all kinds of years. But this 3-step plan, I've been doing maybe a month. Somewhere in that last series, the Lord awakened something in me and helped me to see it's not as difficult as I think. It's not all or nothing. It's not, once I get all these things done, then I go in the harvest. Or if I'm going to be in the harvest, I can't get anything done. It's not like that. It's much more simple. So I'm going to show you the 3 steps. And then we're going to talk about them, okay? Step number 1. Look out the window. Look out the window. Step number 2. Open the door. And step number 3, just step out. Look out the window, open the door, step out. All right? Okay. Let's look at number 1. Look out the window. I really believe that this is something that the Lord is asking and has asked his church to do. It's been a theme. Why do you think the Lord keeps impressing upon Pastor to talk about the harvest? Because it's something that he is passionate about. And so what I mean by looking out the window, this here is like a house. It's a place. It's the house of plenty. It's a place of blessing. It feels good. But the Lord keeps calling us as a church to look out the window, to see the vast harvest, to see what he sees, to hear the urgency in his voice. Look how many people. Look at the world. Look at the confusion. It feels really good in here. But church, look out the window. Now, for me, this happens in prayer. It happens when I spend time with the Lord in prayer. And again, I've only been doing this for about a month. But when I look out the window, when he calls me over, I quit thinking about my prayer requests, my trouble, my needs. Not that I don't bring those to him, but this moment at the window, I see what he sees. I see the harvest as he sees it. There's this love that is transferred into my heart. And he says, Diane, look all around you. Look out the window and see that great and beautiful and vast harvest. And I am changed. When I spend those few minutes with him, I am changed. Things that I think matter don't matter. Plans that I have, they're shifted. And I just pivot in to his heart and what he sees. And then I get direction for my day. Now, there's a really cool story that I want us to look at in the book of Acts, chapter 9. Now, you know the formal name for the book of Acts is the Acts of the Apostles. And they are larger than life in the book of Acts. Peter, James, John, Philip. We read about them and we're just like, oh, they were mighty. But I think Luke, when he wrote the book of Acts, he said to himself, I got to tell some stories about everyday people. Not the apostles, everyday people who made a difference. And that's what Acts chapter 9, beginning at verse 10, is going to introduce to us. Now there was a believer. Everyone say believer. Not an apostle, just a believer. In Damascus, so he lives in Damascus. Damascus is the same Damascus it is today in Syria. And his name is Ananias. The Lord spoke to him in a vision. So I have to think he's there with the Lord at the window. His harvest is Damascus. And the Lord says, Ananias. Yes, Lord, he replied. Now he's getting some direction. The Lord said, I want you to go over to Straight Street to the house of Judas. Not the Judas. That Judas is gone already. This is a different Judas. When you get there, ask for a man from Tarsus named Saul. He is praying to me right now. Now, the Lord is already working over here in Saul's life, and he's given direction to Ananias. Now, if we had time, we'd read this whole interchange with Ananias and the Lord, because he's like, Saul of Tarsus, he's the one that's killing Christians. Are you right? Right? But before this day is over, Ananias simply follows the direction of the Lord. He goes to the house. He meets Saul, who's had this encounter with the Lord. And that encounter has blinded him. And Ananias tells him about Jesus. He lays his hand on Saul, and his blinded eyes are opened. Saul is baptized. This is all in one day. And that Saul, who does he become? Paul, the apostle. You have no idea how God wants to use you. This is the only time we read about Ananias. He's mentioned here, never again. Because he was willing, and because he had a relationship with the Lord, he was directed to go to a man who was already being drawn to the Lord. So, for me, I'm experiencing this in a brand new way. When you just spend time at the window and you say, Lord, let me be the answer to your prayer request, he'll do that. And now all of my things, okay, so I brought this up. This is my planner. Anyone else have a planner? Oh, good. If you don't, I'm telling you, you're going to love this when I tell you about this. Because, you know, this experience at the window, it's really spiritual, but then it becomes really practical. Okay? Here's what happens. When I feel that love and I say, Lord, direct me, next thing I do, I open my planner. Because I plan my days. You all know that, don't you, about me? Like I plan everything. But I'm just going to give you one example. So I'm looking at Tuesday, February 28th, and I got to take the garbage out. And I'm going to have my breakfast. So I don't want to forget that. I'm teasing. I know I have growth group that night. I know I've got some church office work to do. And so I'm like, okay, where am I going to be in the harvest? Today. Because it's my place. It's the time. Oh, yeah, I got to go to Petco because my rewards expired today. And if I don't use them and buy dog food, that's like $15 wasted. Okay. This is exactly what I do. I know you think it's goofy, but I'm telling you, it's really working for me. So I'm like, okay, so Petco is going to be where I'm going to be in the harvest today. All right, I'm going to stop by Caribou. I'm going to pick up some gift cards. And on my way into the store to get the dog food, I'm going to stop by the groomers because that's where I take Max. And I'm just going to say thank you. That's all I'm going to do. Thank you. Here's a Caribou card to have coffee after work. Thank you for the way you take care of my dog. 3 groomers. 2 I know. The one I've never met. And it's him that I see in his eyes something missing. And it's him that I convey with everything in me love. I don't ask him to get down on his knees and repent. I don't have a handy Bible study chart in my back pocket. But in that moment, I'm hoping that something in just my eyes and this gesture speaks love to him. So it's very practical. See, there's a feeling that happens in prayer, but feelings pass. Decisions change everything. Well, you might say, what if I'm not going anywhere today? What if I don't have any errands? That brings me to number 2. You got to open the door. You've got to get in the harvest, you've got to open the door. Remember that farmer at the beginning? He's not going to reap the harvest if he stays inside the house. Now, I love my house. I love to be home. I loved COVID lockdowns. I seriously loved it. And I don't even mind a March snowstorm. If there's a reason I'm stuck inside, I love it. But the truth is, the only way I can be in the harvest is if I open the door. Because I realize my place, I may be the only one in my neighborhood. I've been chosen for this time in God's great timeline. But you know what? When you open the door, He goes with you. He goes with you. You don't have to have it all perfected. He's going with you. His Spirit, the same Spirit that went with those disciples when He sent them, and they were just brand new at this, that Spirit lives in us. And it is the power to be a witness. We can be led by His Spirit. His Spirit can give us courage. His Spirit can show us things that we wouldn't see otherwise. But that's why this is so important, this looking out the window with Him, because when we go to open the door, we've got to take that love with us. That step is pretty quick. Open the door. Just go. You got to go. My challenge to myself was every day, figure out how you're going to be in the harvest. And so once you open the door, this is the great step. Once you open the door, you step out, you're in the harvest. You're in the harvest. Once you step out, You're in the harvest. That's what you got to get. When you go for a walk in your neighborhood, when you go get the mail, when you go get your car fixed, when you go to the gym, at work, at school, at festival, where else? At Costco, wherever you go. That's the pivot. Wherever I am, I'm in the harvest. And the slight change is just seeing people differently, hearing his voice, being led by his Spirit, and more importantly than anything is willingness to take time to talk to someone, to show them love. Gets even better than this. You can do what you love in the harvest. Again, for me, it was like a mind block that if I liked to go on walks, but I got to be in the harvest. If I like to have a garden, have flowers, but I got to be in the harvest. Okay, think about what you like to do. Think about something you like to do. Think about something you're good at. Okay. You can do that in the harvest. You can do what you love in the harvest. It's just a change of thinking. If you like to bake, you bake, and you find someone to bring that to that might need hope. If you like to read, join a book club. If you like to go to the gym, every time you go, you think, this is my harvest. Let me see. Let me be aware. Everything that we do and that we love to do, we can do in the harvest. Let me tell you one more story from the book of Acts. Chapter 9, same chapter. This is a great story. You're going to love all the parts of it. If you really, I want you to go all in. I don't want you to go, a Bible passage. I want you to look at all the details of this story. Because now we have another believer. And she just did what she was good at in the harvest. And you see what happens. Beginning at verse 36. There was a believer. She lives in Joppa. Now, Joppa is on the Mediterranean Sea. Today, it's modern-day Tel Aviv. You know I got to share those facts with you. Her name is Tabitha, which in Greek is Dorcas. She was always doing kind things for others and helping the poor. She's not an apostle. She lives in Joppa, and what is she doing? Kind things. Her harvest is the poor. About this time, she became ill and died. Her body was washed for burial and laid in an upstairs room. But the believers had heard that Peter was nearby. So they sent 2 men to beg him, please come down as soon as possible. Now this is getting ready to be the first recorded person raised from the dead in the book of Acts. So Peter returned with them, and as soon as he arrived, they took him to the upstairs room. Who was in the room? Widows who were weeping, and what were they doing? Showing him the coats and other clothes Dorcas had made. She was just a seamstress. She just knew how to sew. But in this moment, she is dead in an upper room, and these widows are showing Peter the coats and the clothes that she's made for them. Peter asked them all to leave the room. Then he knelt and prayed. Turning to the body, he said, "Get up, Tabitha." And she opened her eyes. When she saw Peter, she sat up. He gave her his hand and helped her up. Isn't it hard to read that without get that? She was dead and she just came back to life. Then he called in the widows, her harvest, and all the believers, and he presented them to her alive. Look at the last verse. The news spread through the whole town, and many believed in the Lord. Because one woman took what she knew how to do and got in her harvest. And all of a sudden, from that experience, a whole town. After this story, she's never mentioned again. Whatever you're good at, you can do in the harvest. I want to share one final thought. And then we're going to make a decision together. When we look back at world history, there are notable moments when people's perspective changed. The world wars, pandemics like the Spanish flu, polio, COVID-19, natural disasters, earthquakes, tsunamis, hurricanes. And in those moments, people made a decision. They moved past a feeling and made a decision. The housewife hangs up her apron. The athlete joins the military. The healthcare worker says, "Sure, I'll work overtime." The Red Cross volunteer takes a leave from work to help. My family always talks about my grandmother, Clarice, had 2 small children. She sent them up to her sister's house in northern Minnesota, and she went to work in an ammunition plant right here in Minneapolis. We have stories of that all the time, where in the moment, priorities shift because people say, I got to do something. I got to do my part. So how much more his mission, his rescue mission, how much more you and I finding our place, recognizing this moment and saying, you know what? Some things don't matter because the harvest is great. The workers are few. So I want you to take this out of your bulletin. And we're going to make some decisions together. And then we're going to have some time in prayer. Okay. Normally, at this point in a message, we might be led by our feelings. We might feel the tug. But like I said, feelings pass. But some decisions you make right now, they can change everything. You can find joy in the harvest. So what I want you to do is I'm going to give you 3 possible things that you can do this week. pick one, pick two, or pick all three, okay? Number one, spend 5 to 10 minutes looking out the window with Jesus. Write that down. This is an option. Now, if you're only going to pick one of the three, this is the one I would pick. Spend 5 to 10 minutes looking out the window with Jesus. And you want to do this at the beginning of your day, whatever time that is, the beginning of your day. Number 2, plan your day to be in the harvest. If you don't have one of these, which is clear, several of you do not, but when you look at your day, whatever you've got to do, errands, places you're going to be, pivot to, I'm not just going to do what I always do. I'm going to plan how today I can be in the harvest. So plan your day in the field. And number 3, at the end of your day, record and pray. This is a powerful part. At the end of the day, before I go to bed, in my planner, I have down Harvest Challenge, and I write the name. If I don't know the name, I write the interaction, but you record it and then you pray it. So for almost 30 days now, I have someone, Ruel, who sells cheese at Byerly's. Mary, my friend from Bachman's. Terry, she works at Home Goods in Edina. My dentist. On and on. All those days I started out my day thinking, where am I going to be? What am I going to say? Lord, lead me. And then at the end of the day, I just said, pray for Mary. We had such a good conversation at Turtle Bread. She told me about her daughter. And then what happens is you're building a relationship. Next time I go to Byerly's, I'm sure to buy some cheese. And I hope that Ruel from Costa Rica is working that day. So you record and you pray. It's that simple. You pick one, you pick two, you pick all three. Put a star. This is a decision you're making today. Your place. His mission. And of course, I have an extra credit option because I am a teacher. The extra credit option, put that thing that you love to do, that thing that you're good at. You're good at baking, you're good at sewing, you're good at changing the oil in a car. Whatever it is, you put that one thing down. And you think, how can I do that this week in the harvest? I'm inviting you to stand. And Don is going to sing a song. And all I want you to do is to close your eyes with me and let his song be our prayer, our closing prayer.
You came.